August Sterling never believed in marriage, not after watching his mother cry herself to sleep every night for a man who never came home. So when he walked into the downtown community center that Tuesday afternoon, the last thing he expected to do was fall in love with a woman who wore a paint-stained apron and smiled like she didn't know the world could be cruel. "Sir, you can't be in here with those shoes," a soft voice called out from across the room. He looked down.
Right.
Italian leather loafers, covered in sawdust and concrete dust from the construction site. He'd come from a last-minute inspection. "Didn't plan to stop in," he said, brushing at the dust. "I was just looking for the director, Graziella Nolan." "That's me." She walked toward him, wiping her hands on a towel tucked into her apron. Her brown hair was tied up in a messy bun, and her cheeks were flushed from working in the art room. But it was her smile, so easy, so open, that made him forget how to speak for a second.
"You're
her?" he asked, blinking. She raised an eyebrow. "You sound surprised." He cleared his throat. "No, I just assumed, never mind." He extended his hand. "August Sterling." Her eyes widened. "As in Sterling Developments." "That's the one."
Oh, wow.
"I thought someone else would be coming." She bit her lip, looking unsure for a second. "You donated the new roof." "I did. And the new security system." "Well, thank you. The kids feel safer already." Her smile came back, and he felt it hit somewhere deep in his chest. He nodded, trying to remember why he was here. "I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by." Graziella glanced around. "You want to see the place? Lead the way." She gave him a tour of bright classrooms, a tiny kitchen, a room filled with donated books and toys. Kids peeked out of doorways, and she introduced every single one of them by name. And somehow, she remembered their stories too. Peter just started speaking again after 6 months. His dad left, so he kind of shut down. August looked through the glass window. A little boy was painting with shaky hands. "You did that?" She shrugged. "We all did." Sometimes kids just need a safe place. When they reached the art room, she motioned to the messy easels and scattered supplies. "This is where the real healing happens." He smiled. "Looks like chaos."
Yeah.
Beautiful chaos. He wasn't sure what came over him, but he said, "I used to sketch before the business took over everything." Her eyes lit up. "Seriously? You should come by one day and draw with the kids." He laughed. "I don't think I'd fit in." Graziella tilted her head. "You'd be surprised." He stayed longer than he meant to. 2 hours later, he was still standing in the middle of the room listening to her talk about the after-school mural project. Finally, he checked his watch. "I should go." She nodded. "Thanks for stopping by." He hesitated. "Graziella?" "Yeah. Can I take you to dinner sometime?" Her eyes widened. "Dinner?" He nodded, suddenly unsure of himself. "I know it's random. I'm not really the fancy dinner type," she said quickly. "We can eat tacos on the curb." "I don't care." She laughed. "You don't seem like the taco on the curb kind of man." "You'd be surprised." She considered him for a long second. "I get off at 6 tomorrow." His chest actually lifted. "I'll be here." She smiled again, and that smile, God help him, it did something to him. Made him forget every rule he ever made about love. The next evening, he picked her up in a black SUV, dressed down in jeans and a navy button-up. She wore a sundress and sneakers, hair pulled back, and a small purse slung over one shoulder. "Tacos?" she asked as she buckled her seatbelt. "There's a truck by the beach. Best in the city." She turned to him with a grin. "You weren't kidding." They sat on the hood of his SUV, feet dangling, ocean wind in their hair as they ate carnitas with spicy lime salsa. "So," she said between bites, "why did you really stop by yesterday?" He hesitated. "Honestly, I was having a bad day. Board meeting went sideways. My assistant called, and mentioned your center had sent a thank you letter. Something about the handwriting made me want to see it for myself. She blinked. You came because of a letter? He shrugged. I don't do handwritten. Nobody does anymore. It felt different. Graziella looked down at her lap, cheeks pink. I wrote that letter. He looked at her. Of course you did. They were quiet for a second. Then she leaned back on her palms. You don't look like a man who has bad days. I have lots of them. I just hide it better than most. When she turned to him, her eyes were soft. You ever talk about it? He shook his head. Not really. You could, she said gently, if you wanted. Something cracked open in his chest. He didn't talk. Ever. But somehow, by the time the sun dipped below the water, she knew everything about him as mom, the way his dad left, the business, the pressure, the loneliness. When she touched his arm lightly, he didn't flinch. He leaned into it. That night, as he walked her to her door, she looked up at him and whispered, This was really nice. He nodded, his voice low. It was. And then, for the first time in a long time, he kissed someone.
Soft. Slow.
Like he meant it. August Sterling didn't fall in love. He worked. He built. He conquered. But over the next few weeks, something changed. He started showing up at the center more. Helped install a new swing set. Sat with Peter and painted a pirate ship. Donated a new van for field trips. He came for the kids. He stayed for Graziella. She laughed with her whole face, and she challenged him without ever raising her voice. She noticed when he didn't sleep, called him out when he got too guarded, kissed him like he was worth loving. One night, after a late dinner on her front porch, he looked at her and said, I told myself I'd never get married. She froze. Okay. I watched it destroy my mom. Saw what it did to her. Swore I'd never put someone through that. She nodded slowly. But, he swallowed. You make me want to break that rule. Her eyes filled. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I should. I'm saying it because it's true. She reached for his hand. August. I'm falling in love with you, Graziella. She pressed her forehead to his and whispered, You're not the only one. And just like that, the man who promised never to marry was already halfway to asking her to be his wife. August sat in his office, the skyline of the city stretching wide behind him, but his eyes didn't register the view. His hand hovered above a contract he was supposed to sign that morning, a merger worth hundreds of millions, but the ink hadn't touched the page. His team was waiting downstairs, his attorney pacing outside the door, but all he could think about was a conversation from the night before. The way Graziella had whispered his name, forehead pressed to his. The way she didn't flinch when he told her the truth about his past. He never let anyone that close. Yet there he was, wondering if she'd eaten breakfast. Wondering if she'd remembered to lock the gate behind the center. Wondering what she looked like when she wasn't trying to be strong for everyone else. A knock came. He didn't move. August. Came the voice of his head of operations, Jonah. We've got board members flying in from Zurich. We need your signature before noon. He finally blinked, eyes narrowing on the untouched document. Tell them the deal's on hold. There was a pause. On hold. I said what I said. The door shut again, more gently than August expected. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He didn't know what was happening to him, but it was something unstoppable, something raw. He hadn't felt this alive in years. By the afternoon, he was standing outside the community center again. Only this time, he wasn't in a suit. He wore a plain dark Henley and jeans, looking almost anonymous as he walked through the fence. A group of kids were in the courtyard playing with sidewalk chalk, and one of them, maybe 8 or 9, looked up and pointed. It's the guy who brought the van. August crouched beside him. What are you drawing? A dragon eating a taco, the boy said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Nice. Are you staying for the movie night? the boy asked, scratching at his nose. Miss Nolan said we're getting popcorn and watching that horse movie. I wasn't invited. You're invited now. Graziella stepped out onto the porch, a clipboard in hand, her brow furrowed as she looked down at the attendance list. She hadn't noticed him yet. He stood, watching her for a moment longer than he meant to. You stalking me, Mr. Sterling? She called without looking up. Just making sure the dragon didn't eat the whole taco. She looked up then, eyes catching his, and something shifted behind them. Not surprise. Not concern. Something warmer. Something startling. You're early, she said, walking toward him. I didn't know there was a start time. Well, now that you're here, you can help carry the projector. I run one of the largest real estate firms on the East Coast. And right now, you're carrying a projector. He followed her inside, through the narrow hallway lined with children's drawings and into the storage space, where a dusty old cart held the outdated equipment. Why don't you use the new system I had installed? It's too fancy. The kids like this old one. It makes the movie look like magic. He nodded and lifted the projector easily. You always do what they want. No, she replied, walking beside him. But I listen. Most people don't. They set up the screen in the courtyard. Chairs were dragged out, beanbags thrown across the grass. As the sun dipped low, kids piled in with blankets and juice boxes, giggling and jostling for spots. Graziella sat beside August on the back bench, pulling her knees to her chest. Do your board members know you're here? She asked after a while. They'll survive. Big deal. One of the biggest. And you just walked away from it? He didn't answer right away. There comes a point where you have to ask yourself if you're building something that actually matters, or if you're just stacking bricks to keep people impressed. She looked at him, her voice low. And what's your answer? I don't know anymore. A gust of wind blew through the courtyard. A child sneezed. Another tried to sneak a second cookie. The projector flickered, then steadied. August stared at the glowing screen but didn't absorb any of it. Graziella's voice came again, quieter. You want to build things that last? He turned to her. Then start with people. The words sank deep. No one had ever said something like that to him. Not in a way that felt like it was meant for his soul, not just his reputation. After the movie ended and the kids were shuffled home with parents and guardians, the courtyard emptied. Graziella started folding chairs, but August stopped her. I've got it, he said. She arched a brow. You sure? Go sit down. She hesitated, then walked back to the porch steps and sat, arms wrapped around her knees. He worked in silence, stacking chairs, winding cords, covering the screen. When he finally joined her again, she was staring up at the stars. I used to come out here after closing, she said. Before I had any staff, I'd sit right here and wonder if the lights would stay on the next month. And now I sit here and wonder if it's still mine. What do you mean? She looked over at him. Sometimes when things grow, they change. I don't want to lose the soul of it. You won't. She gave a half laugh. You say that like you know. He looked at her, his voice even. Because I see what you built. And the kind of person you are. A silence stretched between them. Then she said, You ever wish you could just go back and choose differently? All the time. What would you do? He didn't hesitate. I'd stop pretending I wasn't lonely. She didn't look away. You're not pretending now.
Not.
Another pause. Come with me, she said suddenly, standing. Where? She didn't answer, just led him inside, through the back hallway, up a narrow staircase that twisted past a locked door and ended on a small rooftop. There was a rusted chair and a tin table, a few wind chimes strung along the rail. This is my favorite place, she said. No one knows it's here. He stepped out beside her, the city lights stretching around them. Why bring me? She didn't answer right away. Then, because I think you needed to see something quiet for once. He watched her as the wind tugged at her sleeves. I don't understand how someone like you exists in a world like this. I'm not anything special, August.
Yes.
You are. Emotion flickered across her face, but she didn't let it settle. You say things like that. Like they're nothing. They're not nothing. She stepped closer. Then don't say it unless you mean it. He reached for her hand. I mean every word. She didn't pull away. He kissed her again, but this time with more than curiosity. It was reverent, like something sacred, like he was asking for a piece of her heart and offering his in return. And when she leaned into it, he knew he was already too far gone to turn back. Later that night, as he lay in bed alone, August stared at the ceiling and realized something terrifying. This wasn't just love. This was the kind of woman who could dismantle every wall he'd ever built. And he was letting her. August parked 2 blocks away from the community center, but not because street parking was tight. He needed the walk, the movement, the time to collect the storm circling in his chest. It had been 3 days since the rooftop. 3 days since her lips pressed to his like they had always belonged there. 3 days since his assistant delivered a confidential file to his desk, one he never requested, one that left his hands trembling when he read the name printed on the first page. Graziella Nolan. He hadn't asked for surveillance. Hadn't authorized any background checks. Jonah had gone behind his back, citing due diligence like it was some kind of favor. And yet there it was, line after line of her history. Foster care at 11. Expelled from her first high school for defending another student. Reinstated. Graduated with honors. Full scholarship to a state college. Then a blank period. Almost a year unaccounted for. But that wasn't what made his throat tighten. It was the hospital record. The one with her name listed as next of kin to a child who had died 5 years ago. He hadn't known. And now that he did, he realized how little of her story she'd let him see even as she unlocked parts of his. He reached the gate and stopped short. The center was quiet.
Too quiet.
He checked his watch. It was nearly 4. Kids should have been chasing soccer balls or arguing over crayons. But the yard was empty. The lights inside dimmed. He pushed the gate open and stepped inside just as the front door swung wide. Graziella stood in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed and her arms crossed. Her voice came out flat. I was wondering when you'd show up. He stopped short. What happened? You tell me. She didn't move. Why'd your assistant call the city inspection board this morning? His veins turned to ice. What? Don't play dumb with me, August. They showed up with a clipboard and a list every single outdated fixture, every zoning technicality. They shut us down until we made corrections. I didn't authorize that, he said, stepping closer. Then someone close to you did. His jaw tightened. I'll handle it. Graziella's hands dropped to her sides. You don't get it, do you? This place isn't just a tax write-off or a pet project. Kids count on this. Families depend on us. I know that. Then why are you letting your people treat me like a liability? He looked into her eyes, burning, furious, hurt, and realized the wound wasn't just from the inspection. You read the file, she said before he could speak. Did you like what you saw? I didn't ask for it, but you read it. He didn't deny it. She nodded slowly. You think I'm hiding something? I think you've been through something you never talk about. Her arms wrapped around herself, but it wasn't from the cold. I don't know you the worst parts of me just because you keep showing up. I'm not asking for your worst, he said, voice low. I just want the truth. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't blink the tears away. You want to know the truth, August?
Fine.
I had a son. He wasn't mine by blood, but I raised him like he was. My older sister got into drugs. Left him with me when he was 2. I was 22. No job, no degree. Just a toddler who cried through the night and asked why his mama didn't come back. He didn't interrupt. We made it 3 years, she went on. 3 years of scraped knees and peanut butter sandwiches and bedtime stories. Then one night he got sick. Real sick. By the time I got him to the hospital, it was too late. August's voice caught. Graziella. I buried him alone. No one from my family came. After that, I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who didn't care if I lived or died. She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. So no, I don't tell that story to strangers. Not because I'm ashamed, but because every time I do, I feel like I'm letting him die all over again. He stepped toward her. You're not a stranger to me. Then act like it. I didn't send the inspectors. I didn't authorize any of it. Then prove it, she said, voice shaking. Because every time I open my doors, I'm fighting to give these kids something I couldn't give him a chance. He didn't touch her. He didn't try to fix it. He just nodded. I'll make some calls. She stepped back into the building. You've got until Monday. After that, we lose our city partnership. He watched her disappear behind the door, the weight of her story pressing hard against his ribs. By the next morning, August had fired Jonah. He didn't explain it to the board. He didn't need to. He called in a private contractor to do the necessary upgrades over the weekend at his expense. He cleared the zoning errors himself, walking blueprints down to the city office with his sleeves rolled up and a pen behind his ear.
He didn't sleep. Didn't eat much either.
But Monday morning at 8 sharp, the doors to the community center reopened. Graziella stood in the doorway as the first child ran in. She didn't say anything when she saw August across the street, watching. She didn't wave. But she didn't close the door either. That was enough. That afternoon, he returned not to fix anything, but to listen. She was in the small kitchen sorting snacks. Boxes of granola bars, juice pouches, apples. He leaned against the frame. I didn't come to justify anything. She didn't turn around. Good. I came to say I'm sorry for letting anyone in my world treat yours like it was disposable. She placed a container on the counter. You did fix it. That's not the same as apologizing. She turned then, arms still crossed, but something in her expression had softened. I'm not used to people showing up when it's messy, she said quietly. They usually leave when it stops being inspiring. I didn't fall in love with you because you inspired me. Her head jerked up. You said love. I meant it. She swallowed hard, then walked past him and out into the hallway, motioning for him to follow. They ended up back on the rooftop. She didn't say anything for a few minutes, just stared out at the same city that had broken both of them in different ways. Then she spoke. I never thought I'd want someone again. Not after everything. But then you started coming around. And you didn't ask me to be more than I was. You just stayed. He took a step closer. I'm not going anywhere. Don't promise that, she said, looking at him. Unless you're sure. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver key. I had the locks changed. Only you and I have copies. That building's yours now, legally. I transferred the deed this morning. Her breath caught. August. I don't want you to ever feel powerless again. Not because of me. Not because of anyone. She stared at the key like it was a live wire. You gave me a home when I didn't ask for one, he said. Let me give you one back. She walked to him slowly, took the key, and then wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his chest. He held her like he didn't know how to let go. And for the first time since he was a boy, August Sterling realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He didn't want to be alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be. The warehouse on the west side of the city had been abandoned for years, but August knew its layout by memory. It was one of the earliest properties he'd acquired, before the boardrooms and headlines, back when he still did site walkthroughs himself. Now, it was the last place he expected to find himself on a Friday night, standing beneath exposed rafters and busted skylights, waiting for the man who had just tried to sabotage everything he'd built with Graziella. Jonah arrived late. He stepped out of a black sedan, sleeves rolled up, tie missing, like he hadn't slept in days. He looked at August like he still expected forgiveness.
A mistake.
You lost your mind? August's voice echoed through the steel bones of the building. You sent the city after her. I protected your name.
No.
You protected your ego. Jonah's jaw clenched. You stopped answering calls. You skipped out on Zurich. You froze a deal that took 9 months to secure. I'd do it again. You're throwing away everything we built for a woman who runs a daycare in a half-broken building. August moved so fast Jonah didn't finish the sentence. He pinned him against the wall, voice low and lethal. Say her name again. Disrespect her one more time.
Jonah didn't speak.
August stepped back, chest rising and falling with a kind of fury he hadn't felt in years. You don't speak for me. You never did. She's not who you think she is. She's exactly who I think she is. You're the one who never saw her. Jonah fixed his collar. You're not the man I used to work for. No, August said. I'm not. I'm better. He left without another word. By the time he got back to his penthouse, the city was asleep. He tossed his keys on the counter, walked past the untouched bar cart, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline blinked like it always had, but it didn't feel the same. None of it did. Not the leather-bound deals. Not the empty nights. Not the silence he used to mistake for peace. He opened his phone. No new messages. She hadn't called since Monday. Graziella had taken the keys to the building, but not the ones to him. And he didn't blame her. The next morning, he drove to the center, but didn't go inside. He parked across the street and watched. Families came and went. Volunteers carried boxes. The mural on the side wall had grown. Someone had painted stars above the skyline now, and 3 children standing hand in hand beneath them. One of them had curly hair tied with a red ribbon. He hadn't known she was working on that. He didn't realize he'd stepped out of the car until a small voice tugged at his sleeve.
Hey.
You're the guy with the dragon taco. It was Peter, the boy who barely spoke when they first met. August crouched. I remember you. Peter squinted at him. You look sad. He almost laughed. Do I? Miss G says sad people are just people who forgot they're not alone.
He swallowed hard.
She's right. Peter handed him a half-crushed drawing from his back pocket. It was a picture of the courtyard, with stick figures. One of them had black hair and a blue shirt. The other had wild brown hair and a big smile. Between them was a red heart. She said you don't come around anymore. August looked at the drawing. Tell her I'm trying to be brave. Peter nodded solemnly. Me too. That night, August did something he hadn't done since his early 20s. He called in a favor from someone not on his payroll. His mother. She answered after 2 rings, her voice aged but still sharp. August. Mum. A pause. It's been a while. I know. Another silence. Are you okay?
No. She didn't ask why.
She never did. She just waited. I met someone, he said finally, and I think I'm in love with her. That's wonderful. It's not simple. It never is. But if she makes you want to call your mother again, I'd say she's worth the trouble. He laughed short, surprised. I'm proud of you, she said. Even when you forget how to be soft. He hung up with his chest tight and his eyes burning. He didn't sleep. By Monday, he had a plan. He called every member of his board and scheduled a meeting. Not in the tower, not in a conference room, but on site at the community center. When the SUVs rolled up and the executives stepped out in tailored suits and polished shoes, Graziella was standing on the steps with her arms folded, brow furrowed. August, what is this? I need 10 minutes, he said. Will you trust me? She looked past him at the crowd of businessmen, then back at him. That depends. He turned to the board. You came here expecting a pitch. You won't get one. You'll get the truth. They followed him inside. Into the classrooms. The art room. The courtyard. Graziella didn't move. She watched from the doorway, jaw tight. He walked them through every corner, not as a developer, but as a man who'd seen miracles sewn into paint-stained carpets and cracked tiles. This place doesn't make money, he said. It makes something better. It restores people. It gives them back the parts of themselves they thought they lost. One of the board members, an older woman in pearls, raised an eyebrow. And what exactly are you proposing? I'm not asking for approval. I'm telling you this is the future of our foundation. We're funding 10 centers across the city, starting here. Under her direction. He nodded toward Graziella. She blinked. The woman in pearls looked at her. You run this place? Graziella squared her shoulders. I built it from nothing. The woman nodded once. Then I suppose you know what you're doing. After the board left, August turned to her. I didn't ask for permission because I didn't want to insult what you already made. But I couldn't keep pretending my company only builds towers. Graziella stepped forward, voice low. You really did all that? I'd do more. She looked at him, and something in her eyes cracked open. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver key he'd given her. Then she took his hand and pressed it into his palm. I don't want a building, she whispered. I want you. He stared at her. I want the man who stayed up all night to fix what someone else broke. The one who painted pirate ships and walked away from everything just to tell me the truth. He wrapped his arms around her and held her like he hadn't been able to breathe right in days. I don't know how to be good at this, he said into her hair. You don't have to be good. You just have to stay. I'm not going anywhere. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. You really love me? He nodded. I think I started the minute you told me my shoes didn't belong in your classroom. They laughed, but it broke into something more.
A quiche.
Not soft. Not hesitant. But certain.
Real.
And when they pulled apart, she whispered, I never thought I'd fall for a man who builds skyscrapers. And I never thought I'd lose myself in someone who runs a community center. But here we are, she said. And he held her like he'd never let her go again. The wind shifted as August stepped out of his building and onto the street, early morning shadows still clinging to the sidewalks like secrets waiting to be uncovered. He rolled his sleeves up past his elbows and crossed the avenue on foot. Every driver who passed slowed a little, not because of who he was, but because of how he moved, like a man who had nothing left to prove, only something left to protect. The center had barely opened its doors when he arrived. Music drifted faintly through the open windows, something acoustic, probably one of the volunteers setting up in the art room. He didn't knock. He walked in like he belonged, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't asking permission to show up. He was showing up because he needed to, because she was there. Graziella was in the back office, standing over a stack of manila folders, sorting through grant applications. She looked up when she saw him, eyes still tired from something she hadn't told him yet. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it. You didn't sleep. She didn't deny it. We have a family coming in this afternoon. Emergency placement. 3 kids under 7. Their mother disappeared last week. We're trying to get them beds, but we're short. He crossed the room and took the folder from her hands. I'll get the beds. You already gave us everything we needed, she said, reaching for it again. No, I didn't, he said. I gave you what I thought would help. But this is what keeps it alive. She let out a breath. They've been bouncing from house to house. The youngest has a speech delay. The oldest keeps stealing food and hiding it. He didn't flinch. Where are they now? With a temp family in Queens. But they're maxed out. If we don't take them, they'll be separated.
He didn't wait.
You're not losing them. I'll handle the logistics. You just be ready to receive them. She studied him for a moment. I don't want your money. That's the thing. I'm not offering money. I'm offering muscle.
And time.
And whatever it takes. Her shoulders dropped slightly. There's a difference, isn't there? He nodded. A big one. Later that afternoon, the kids arrived in the back seat of a borrowed sedan. Graziella greeted them with a calm voice and steady eyes, crouching low to meet them at their level. August stood behind her, silent, watching. The oldest boy clutched a backpack to his chest and avoided everyone's gaze. The middle child, a girl with her hair tied in uneven braids, stared blankly at the sidewalk. The youngest clung to Graziella's leg without a word. August didn't say anything. He just carried their bags inside, built the bunk beds himself, and stayed out of the way. When the kids were finally settled in, Graziella found him in the back courtyard, wiping dust from his palms. You didn't have to stay. I know, he said, but I wanted them to see a man who doesn't leave. She looked at him for a long moment. You think you're that man now. I think I'm becoming him. She stepped closer. You're changing. I'm not. I'm just remembering who I was before the world told me not to feel. She didn't respond right away. Then, did you ever want a family? He looked out across the courtyard at the mural now finished with stars and 3 children standing beneath them. When I was younger, I used to imagine what it'd be like to come home to someone. Not a mansion, not an empire, just a table with chairs filled. Laughter.
Light.
I convinced myself it was a dream meant for other people. And now, he turned back to her. Now I wonder if it was always meant for me. I just stopped believing I was worthy of it. She reached for his hand. Maybe we both did. That night, Graziella walked into her small kitchen to find August standing at the stove, stirring something in a pot. He'd rolled up his sleeves again, and there was flour on his wrist. You cook now? She asked, crossing her arms. I cook when I can't sleep, he replied without looking at her. Figured you hadn't eaten. She leaned against the counter. And what exactly is that? Risotto.
Don't ask me why.
It felt right. She watched him for a moment, then reached for 2 plates. You think you can feed a woman and fix the world in the same night? I'm trying to do one thing right. They sat together at the tiny table, knees brushing. She took a bite, eyes widening. This is actually good. Don't sound so surprised. I thought you lived off protein bars and espresso. I still do, but I can make an exception. They ate in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. Then she set her fork down and looked at him. What happens when the headlines find out? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. They will. Eventually. I'm not the kind of woman they expect you to be with. Good. I'm not trying to impress them. They'll say I'm using you. And I'll say I needed you more than you needed me. She exhaled slowly. Do you know how long it's been since I let someone make me dinner? He didn't answer. She leaned her chin into her hand. Since my sister. Before she left. We used to take turns cooking for the boys. It was our way of pretending we were a real family. You were. Until we weren't. He reached across the table and took her hand. You are again. Maybe not in the way you imagined. But you are.
She didn't speak.
She didn't have to. The next day, August walked into his office, called his legal team, and gave them new instructions. Every property he had sitting dormant, every lot, every foreclosure, every forgotten piece of land was to be assessed for community potential. Not profit. Not resale value. Purpose. When his VP asked why, August said the words without hesitation. Because I'm done building towers that touch the sky if the people underneath can't breathe. And he meant it. That afternoon, he returned to the center with a rolled-up blueprint under his arm. Graziella was in the courtyard again, this time dragging a hose across the grass for the kids to run through. She saw him coming and raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you brought another check. He unrolled the blueprint on the sidewalk.
Nope.
brought a dream. She crouched beside him, eyes scanning the page. A greenhouse. Not just that. A teaching garden. A rainwater system. Solar panels. The whole roof gets converted. She looked up at him. You serious? I'm always serious. For the kids. For every kid who thinks the world forgot them. She traced the lines with her finger. This could change everything. That's the point. And when she looked at him again, something flickered in her expression. Not surprise. Not hope.
But trust.
The kind of trust that isn't given. The kind that's earned. Later that night, as the kids fell asleep and the volunteers locked up, August waited by her gate. She found him there, hands tucked in his pockets, eyes watching the sky. I didn't think you'd still be here, she said. He turned to her. I couldn't leave. Why? He stepped closer. Because I realized something.
What?
That I want to marry you. The words landed like thunder. Not loud but impossible to ignore. She stared at him. You said you never would. I said I never wanted to be like my father. But I'm not him. I want to build something that doesn't disappear when the hard times come. She took a step forward, voice barely audible. Are you asking me? He nodded. Not tonight. Not yet. But I want you to know where my heart is going. She reached up and touched his face, thumb brushing against the stubble on his jaw. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, he said. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. And in that moment, with nothing between them but the truth, she kissed him again. Not because they had to, but because they finally could. August stood beneath the scaffolding of the future greenhouse, hands stained with sawdust and sun on his back. The frame was halfway up, and the foundation had been poured that morning. Volunteers moved around him with buckets and drills, but his mind wasn't on construction. It was on the woman who hadn't called him since the night he told her he wanted to marry her. That was 5 days ago. She hadn't pulled away. She hadn't run. But she hadn't said yes either. She'd kissed him soft, grateful, but there was something held back. He'd felt it in the way she lingered at the edge of the moment, as if she were waiting for something else to fall apart. He dropped the hammer beside the stack of beams and walked around the structure to the garden beds. She was kneeling in the dirt, sleeves rolled up, pressing her fingers into the soil with a little boy beside her who was planting marigold seeds with careful determination. She looked up just once, acknowledging him, then returned her attention to the child. He waited until the boy ran off to join the others before speaking. You're avoiding me. Graziella brushed her hands off on her jeans. I'm busy. I can see that. But you've been busy for 5 days. She stood, brushing the back of her legs. We've had 3 new families come in. I'm trying to keep things afloat. I'm not asking you to stop working. I'm asking you to talk to me. I don't know what to say, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. Then say that. She looked at him now, and something in her expression flickered. What you said the other night, it was beautiful. Overwhelming.
And honest.
But I don't want to say yes because it felt good in the moment. I want to say yes because I'm ready for what comes after. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. No, but you're building a life around me already. And I'm still playing catch-up with my own heart. He stepped closer. Then let me slow down. You don't know how. He didn't argue. She pulled her hair back into a knot, her voice quieter. You keep offering me everything. But I've spent years learning how to stand without needing anyone to hold me up. Maybe it's not about holding you up. Maybe it's about walking beside you.
She paused.
Then nodded once. I need to believe that. Then let me prove it. That night, August didn't return to the penthouse. He stayed. Helped clean up the storage room. Took inventory in the supply closet. Sat with a girl who wouldn't stop crying long enough to draw a picture of her missing dog. When the last child fell asleep, he found an old cot in the office and lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the building around him. It was the first time silence didn't feel empty. At dawn, he made coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in a storm drain, but Graziella still took the cup with a tired smile when she found him folding donation forms in the front room. "You stayed," she said. "I said I would. You smell like crayons and industrial cleaner." He passed her the clipboard. "You look like someone who hasn't eaten since yesterday." She took it without argument. "We've got a city rep visiting in an hour. They're evaluating us for a youth art grant. Do you want me gone? I want you exactly where you are. Just maybe in a clean shirt." The meeting went well. Graziella gave a tour, explained the mural program, introduced the city official to a few of the kids. August stayed in the background, not because he didn't belong, but because she was the one who made the place breathe. After the rep left, she found him by the gate, sleeves rolled up again, this time holding a clipboard of his own. "What's this?" "A list of every open lot within 5 miles. All city-owned. I've already submitted a proposal to the zoning board." She blinked. "You're planning more centers?" "I'm planning one more. A place for teens. Somewhere safe to go when they age out of everything else." She didn't say anything for a long moment.
Then,
"You're building a kingdom out of broken pieces." He looked at her. "You showed me what they were worth." She stepped forward slowly. "You know what scares me? Tell me. I didn't plan for you. I had my life in order. My days full. I was whole. And now I don't know where the line is between what I built and what we're building." He reached for her hand. "Maybe there's no line." That night, she came to him. Not with answers, not with declarations, but with quiet. She found him on the rooftop again, sitting on the same rusted chair, a folder in his lap. "I brought something," she said. He looked up. "What is it?" She handed it to him. Inside were drawings, faded with time. Crayon scribbles. Stick figures with names written beneath them in a child's handwriting. "Luca drew those," she said, voice soft. "The boy I raised. I kept them all this time. But I never showed anyone." He looked at the pictures with reverence. He was loved. He was everything. August closed the folder and handed it back. "So are you." She sat beside him, knees brushing his. "I think I was afraid that saying yes to you meant saying goodbye to him. I'd never ask you to let him go." She looked at him now, eyes clear. "You're not replacing anything. You're adding to it." He nodded, not trusting his voice. And for the first time, she leaned into him without hesitation, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm ready," she whispered. He turned to her slowly. "For what?" "For the life we haven't built yet." The next morning, August stood on the rooftop again, but this time, he wasn't alone. Graziella stepped out in a soft linen dress, barefoot, hair down. He'd asked her to come up early. She hadn't asked questions. He held a small velvet box in his hand, but it wasn't the ring that made her eyes fill.
it was what he said.
"I don't want us to have a perfect life. I want us to have a true one, with noise,
And late nights.
and kids who track mud through the hallway. I want the kind of life where we leave the lights on for someone who's scared to come home. I want every part of you, not just your strength, but your tenderness, your doubts, your memories, your laughter. I want to love you in the ordinary days, not just the beautiful ones."
She didn't speak.
He opened the box. The ring inside wasn't extravagant. It had an emerald set in a simple gold band. Nothing flashy, just honest. "Marry me, Graziella. Not because we planned this, but because we can't imagine our lives without it." She reached for him, tears on her cheeks now. "I was never waiting for someone to save me," she said. "I know, but I think I was waiting for someone to stay." He slid the ring onto her finger as the sun broke above the city skyline, and for the first time in his life, August Sterling didn't feel like he was giving something up. He felt like he was finally coming home. August slipped the ring onto her finger, and everything around them, the wind, the city, even the ache of time, seemed to fall silent. Graziella looked down at her hand, then up at him, and whispered something only he could hear. A vow without ceremony. A yes without hesitation. They didn't rush. There was no need. The commitment had been made before the words were ever spoken. But the next few weeks moved fast anyway. The center buzzed with new life. Construction on the rooftop garden finished early, and vegetables sprouted in the raised beds like they knew they were safe there. The greenhouse glass reflected the sky at dusk, and some of the older kids started calling it the quiet place. August funded a music program. Graziella hired a counselor full-time. The mural wall wrapped all the way around the building now, and street artists were signing up to teach workshops. One morning, Graziella found a note slipped under her office door. It was written in blocky handwriting and sealed with a sticker shaped like a dinosaur. Thank you for not leaving. It wasn't signed, but she didn't need it to be. Later that day, she sat with August in the back courtyard while the kids made bird feeders out of peanut butter and pine cones. You remember the first time you came here? She asked. I remember thinking I was overdressed. You were. He reached over and brushed a leaf from her shoulder. You changed me. Graziella glanced at the children.
No.
You let yourself be changed.
He didn't argue.
He just took her hand and held it, resting it on his knee like it belonged there. Because it did. They decided on a small ceremony. Not because they couldn't afford more, but because they didn't want more. Graziella didn't want a ballroom or a guest list that stretched for miles. She didn't want to walk down an aisle feeling like she had to prove anything. What she wanted was something honest. Something warm. They chose the greenhouse. August cleared it with the board in less than an hour. He didn't have to explain why. One of them even offered to bring flowers. Another sent a food truck. The kids made paper lanterns strung from the beams. Someone loaned a sound system. Graziella's dress was simple, soft ivory with lace sleeves and a hem that brushed the floor like it had always belonged in that space. She didn't have bridesmaids. She had children lined up with wildflowers in their hands and dirt on their knees. August wore a linen suit, no tie, and a ring in his pocket that he'd had reset with the stones from his mother's wedding band. She'd offered them without him asking. I want this love to keep going, she'd said. Let it heal something. The sun was still rising when they stood beneath the arch covered in jasmine, bare feet on the greenhouse floor, eyes locked on each other. There were no chairs, just people surrounding them with quiet reverence. August took her hands, still calloused from the garden. You taught me that love isn't about grand gestures, he said. It's about showing up. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially then. I promise to keep showing up. Not just for you, but with you. Graziella didn't cry.
She didn't need to.
Her voice was steady. I don't need a perfect life, she said. I just want a full one. With mess and music and kids who forget their shoes. I promise to live it all with you. Even the parts that scare me. When they kissed, the kids clapped too early and someone hit the wrong button on the music, but no one cared. It was real. It was theirs. After the ceremony, they didn't leave for a honeymoon. They stayed. They sat on the steps of the greenhouse eating tacos from a paper plate while the children danced barefoot in the courtyard. Graziella leaned against his shoulder. Do you ever miss your old life? She asked. He shook his head. Not once. I think I was afraid this would feel too big, too heavy. And now, she looked up at him. Now it feels like home. He kissed her temple. That's all I ever wanted. The weeks that followed stitched together like linen, uncomplicated and strong. August didn't return to the penthouse. He sold it quietly, donating the proceeds to expand the teen center. They bought a small craftsman house 5 blocks from the community center. It had a creaky porch and a garden with wild roses. The living room was too small for the furniture they inherited, and the bedroom window stuck on humid mornings, but none of that mattered. They filled the walls with art from the kids. Paper hearts, finger paintings, a pencil sketch of the greenhouse framed above the fireplace. August built a shelf for Graziella's old books. She left space for the ones they'd collect together. They didn't talk about what they'd lost. They lived in what they'd found. One Saturday morning, Graziella stood barefoot in the kitchen, humming under her breath as she cracked eggs into a bowl. August leaned against the doorway, watching her with a look that didn't belong to any past version of himself.
"You're staring," she said. "I'm memorizing."
She turned the stove down. "You say that like something's changing." He walked toward her and placed a hand on her waist. "Everything's changing, but it's the kind we prayed for." Her eyes softened. "You prayed? Every night since I met you." She paused, then took his hand and pressed it over her stomach. "I think someone answered."
He didn't speak.
Just looked at her, his thumb still against her skin, the realization settling in like sunlight through glass. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I took the test twice." He wrapped his arms around her and buried his face in her shoulder. "I didn't think I could feel more full. Turns out you can." They didn't tell anyone for weeks. Not because they were hiding it, but because they were savoring it. One afternoon, as August was helping a group of teens unload supplies into the new wing of the center, Graziella stood beside one of the volunteers and watched him. "He changed everything," the woman said. Graziella smiled.
"No."
He just remembered who he was. The pregnancy was uncomplicated, gentle, like her body knew this child was coming into a world that would make room for them. August read every book. He built the crib himself, even though they could have bought 5. He painted the nursery a soft, pale green. They didn't find out the gender. They didn't care. The night the baby came, it was raining. Quiet, steady. August held her hand through every contraction, breathing with her, whispering prayers like he hadn't since childhood. And when the baby arrived strong, lungs full of life, he cried. Not because he was afraid, but because he finally understood what legacy meant. They named her Eden. She had Graziella's eyes, August's hands. She fit into their arms like she'd always been there. The center kept going. Kids kept coming. The garden bloomed. The teens painted a new mural, this one with a family under a tree. A little girl curled in her mother's arms. A man standing beside them with his hand over his heart. No one asked if it was based on real people. They didn't have to. Years passed with the kind of rhythm that builds something deeper than memory. August taught Eden how to draw floor plans on napkins. Graziella taught her how to plant carrots in a straight line. She grew up in a house filled with music and mismatched chairs and the smell of cinnamon on cold mornings. One night, after Eden had fallen asleep with her favorite book on her chest, August wrapped his arms around Graziella on the porch swing. "You made me a father," he said. "You made me brave," she replied. We made each other whole. And beneath the stars, the same stars that once hung painted above the mural wall, they sat in the silence of everything they'd built. Not perfect, not polished, but real, and full, and forever.